Hello friends, it's Chris Wilson from St. Andrew and here to talk about sermon this coming week. It is the final week of our Difference Makers series around stewardship and generosity. And the final passage that we'll be looking at is from the Gospel of Matthew chapter 14. The middle story in 14 is one we'll look at is the feeding of the 5,000. It's a very familiar story. And my focus will be on the nature of the disciples in that story and how the disciples respond within that story. They're excited about the crowds. They're excited that so many people want to come out and hear Jesus. Their excitement wanes as soon as Jesus says, we need to feed these people. And they were thinking, can't we send them home? Don't they have places they can go? Don't they have food in their own places? Why are we responsible for feeding these thousands of people? And they find every way possible to think of, can we get out of this? And Jesus is committed to taking care of these people that are out on the countryside. Who knows how far they've traveled or how far they have to go back to get to their homes or the places where they sleep, and says, we have an opportunity not only to give them a message, we have an opportunity to fill their stomachs. And the disciples are very leery about this whole thing and how this is going to happen. I mean, they gather what they can, and there's very little food. It says there's a little bit of bread and fish, and there's just not much there. And they begin to pass around what they have, and they're thinking, this is not going to go well. It's like preparing for a party of 10, and you have 200 people show up. This is not going to turn out well. And the cool thing about the story is that as they pass these things around, the story goes is that everybody ends up getting something to eat, and they have something left over. And there's all kinds of theories around this story. Sometimes people think it's a miracle. That out of something small, everybody got fed. Everyone got taken care of. There's maybe those that are on the practical side that maybe people had stuff on their possession and just didn't talk about it and said, well, if they're going to share, maybe I'll share. And maybe the impetus of Jesus sharing out of a small amount, people pulled out what little bits they had, enough that there was enough generosity of sharing that everyone got something to eat, make sure everyone was taken care of in the meantime. And so you have a little bit, is it miracle? Is it practical generosity? My guess is it's a little bit of both. We don't have to choose either or. I think some of the miracle happens in what unfolds, regardless of the nature of what actually happened. The end result is not anyone walked away hungry. When we think about our gifts and our generosity, we wonder, should I hold some back? Do I wait for the miracle? Or do I become part of the miracle and part of the sharing that makes a difference? And so we'll take a deep look at this passage, probably one of the most important chapters in Matthew's gospel. There's a lot of things that happen in that chapter, and the center part of this chapter is this feeding story. It's interesting to note that outside of the last week of Jesus' life, the only story that makes it in all four Gospels is this story, the feeding of the 5,000. So there's something important that needs to rise out of the story that I think all of us can learn from. So I hope you'll join us on Sunday.